Greetings, everybody. I am recording in the morning on Saturday, January 10th, and today is day one of recording my voice liberation course. I'm super excited. I'll admit I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm not listening to that nervousness because that is a form of resistance, which I've spoken about recently. That is the word that Stephen Pressfield uses in his book, his brilliant manifesto, The War of Art. Resistance is this force that comes up every time you go to do your art practice. Every time you go to work on your novel or you go to do your vocal practice, resistance shows up, and it shows up in a unique way for you. You have your own patterns that are manifested as resistance, and the war of art is it's also a hero's journey. You are on a path to reclaim your creativity, your unique voice, and along the way you are going to be struck with tricksters, battles, resistance. So for me, my resistance is nervousness, a fear that what if I can't deliver this grand vision I have in my head, which of course I've been doing this long enough. I've been on this path long enough. Now the way I handle resistance is I take a deep breath, I recognize it, I see it, and then I say, that's enough now, go away. And I just keep going. I focus on what it is I need to do. I do. That is, in my opinion, that's how you handle resistance. You see it, and then you don't pay it any more attention. So I was inspired to make a voice note before I get going on this journey of mine because of a comment that or a video that someone posted in my Healthy Voice community. And the video was about the empath's journey. And I have not really talked much about the path of the empath on my platform, but I can assure you it is something that is in my vocabulary, it's in my experience, and I would like to share a little bit about that because I do think that there's a lot of room for discussion on what it is, what it means to be an empath, what this life feels like from the perspective of an empath, and what it means for you and your voice. And I do have a lot to say on that specific topic. So let me just do a little preface here and let's talk about what this word actually means and how people tend to respond to it. The thing about being an empath is that it's a bit of controversial is too strong a word, really. It's it's very simple. An empath is somebody who feels everything very intensely. And a similar term is a highly sensitive person. And honestly, I have been reading opinions and research on both of these subjects for well over 15 years. I mean, it's probably been closer to 20 years at this point, and I'm still not sure what the difference is. I'll be honest with you. I've heard a lot of people try to explain the difference, but really they don't seem to be that different. I tend to prefer the word empath because it's more clear in what it means. And I feel, as I mentioned in a previous post, it bothers me when language is too clinical, when it isn't, when you don't get a feeling from the word of what it means. I think it's a corrupt term. I don't think it's I don't think it's a term that offers any kind of clarity, which frustrates me. And therefore, I feel it's pointless. And so, with highly sensitive person, it kind of gets to it. Okay, we have high sensitivity, and it's clearly about a person, about the human, but it's still too clinical for me, and I don't like it. I like the term empath much better because what it signals is that it is someone who has a high degree of empathy, and I mean that in a literal sense. The only thing that frustrates me about the term empath and the way people tend to use it is that sometimes throughout the years, I have engaged in a lot of empath communities, and what I've observed is you do have people who think they're better than everybody, essentially. They think they have more compassion, but empathy does not mean compassion. That's not what we're talking about here when we talk about someone who is an empath. An empath is somebody who feels so much energy from everyone around them. Now, do you necessarily feel compassion for every bit of emotional energy you feel from people? No, because sometimes that energy you're feeling from them is anger and hatred. And I don't feel compassion for people who hate me or who want to punish me. I feel defensive. I have my guard up. I feel like I go into survivor mode. And that's what being an empath is. It's feeling so much from other people that it affects your whole life. And so this word is also it is controversial because there are some people who will flat out deny that it exists. Some people will deny that empathy is even possible because it implies that you can tell what another person is feeling. And I understand the criticism and the argument because the truth is, it takes some time to learn the spectrum of human emotions and to be able to interpret the energy that you're actually feeling. And I say this as somebody who is a mature, grown up. I'm a mature person. At this point, I've had several decades of life experience. And I can tell you, I was an empath as a child. I was an empath as a teenager. In my young adult years, I've always had this high uh, sensitivity to other people's vibrations. And that's really what we're talking about here. It's a sensitivity to vibrations. It's being able to sense vibrations of everything. But human beings are highly vibrating entities, and our vibrations are heavily influenced by the thoughts that we have and the emotional feelings that we feel. And so some people have an ability to feel more of that energy. Now, when I was a child, was I able to say for sure what somebody was feeling, even though I was feeling something? No, not at all. In fact, that's what made it so scary because I didn't know what was going on. I just know that some people felt good to me and some people felt bad to me. But the scariest part of all was the people who went back and forth, the people who were sometimes feeling good to me, but then they could switch and they felt very dangerous to me. And I encountered a lot of people like that, as I imagine many of you listening probably experienced that too. And it was extremely confusing. Now, there is something called empath training. I've seen those words along the way as well. And I should back up and address another controversy. Some people believe that being an empath is something you're born with, as in it's like a psychic ability that you're born with. Others believe that it's something that you acquire as a skill. And I would still say it's a psychic ability, whether you're born with it or not. that it's a skill you develop as a survival mechanism, meaning when you grow up in a dangerous environment or an unpredictable environment, and we're all very sensitive beings, especially as children, and you get the message that some people are dangerous, and when you have to be around these people on a regular basis, you start to develop, as a form of survival, a high sensitivity to the energy, vibrations, emotions, etc., of other people. And you do this because they're unpredictable. And your subconscious is trying to remember patterns. It's trying to figure out what is a warning sign that I can hold on to so that I can be more prepared the next time this person blows up. Now, I personally tend to believe that it's more that being an empath has more to do with survival. Although I do believe that people are born with gifts. I know that that's true because I have piano students who are unusually gifted at music from a very young age, whereas other children are not, and they have to be taught from point A to point B. They don't have this natural gift, but the ones who do, I mean, where does that come from? It's inborn. It's in their DNA. So some people do have naturally high levels of sensitivity from the moment they're born. Now, these people, in my opinion, are the ones who are the most in danger of being damaged and silenced. And I'll say they are a big reason why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. I'll just stop there. I'll just say that because when you are born with a natural gift of high sensitivity and you are brought up in an environment that is unpredictable and sometimes dangerous, you have, I mean, these are the people who lose their voices. These are the people who develop certain speech problems that make it impossible to communicate, that have ideas that they're too afraid to share. And so, okay, so that's what an empath is. That I've addressed both sides in terms of the debate about what is empathy, what is someone called an empath. Is it highly sensitive person or is it empath? Well, you decide. Now, in terms of the voice, I want to talk about this because I I think that obviously there are. Oh, I was starting to, let me get back on my train of thought. I was starting to talk about how over time you can become quite skilled at identifying other people's emotions because you develop more life experience. And so what I did was, we were talking about empath training. Sorry, I sometimes it's hard to stay on track, but I'm doing my best here. So empath training, that term always intrigued me, and I read several books on the topic, and I can't say that any of them really helped me, but it was always good to read other people's perspectives and to see how they overcame the debilitating effects of being an empath. And the debilitating effects of being an empath is that you become so hyper vigilant about reading other people's emotions because that is how you stay alive, that you at some point you lose you lose awareness of your own energy, of who you are. And that's who I'm addressing in the Healthy Voice platform. I'm trying to reach people who have lost their voice, even internally, where they're trying to figure out, who are you? Who am I? What is my unique voice? What do I like? What are my opinions? What do I want to express to the world? How do I want to dress every day? How do I want to style my hair? How do I want to decorate my home? Are all of these things being chosen for me essentially because I'm afraid of dying or being rejected? Or do I know what I like? Do I know? That is part of the recovery process when you've been one of these empaths for so long without understanding how it's affected you negatively. Now, I want to pause and talk about the good news about being an empath because there is good news. About um 6 years ago, I started becoming a little more comfortable using terms like this in my voice lessons. For many, many years, I played it very safe. I was afraid of being seen as a weirdo. I was afraid of being seen as someone you can't take seriously. And so I tried to leave any esoteric terminology out of my teachings. But I had this one voice student, and she was also a piano student, a young teenager. And she told me that she was an HSP, a highly sensitive person. And her mother was a therapist. And so I realized, okay, I think I think maybe I can be a little bit more honest and transparent with this student because I think it would actually help her. She was struggling to sing certain notes and relax, and I was trying everything I could with technical descriptions. And I was getting frustrated, not with her. I was getting frustrated with the method, the teaching method, because I was basically teaching her the way I had been taught. And I had a moment where I realized, this didn't work for me when I was a student. Why am I continuing to do this? Why am I continuing to assume that it will help other people when it didn't help me? And the reason why this manner of teaching, meaning just strictly describing anatomy and technical processes in the body, I mean, when I was a student, a voice student, it just went over my head. My teachers would try to explain things to me to do, and I was afraid that they would think I was stupid, and so I just pretended to understand what they were saying. And then what I would do to actually learn is I would pay really close attention to the good singers. And thank God I went to a school with so much talent. I mean, an unreal level of talent. And so every time one of these amazing singers sang a solo, in rehearsal or whatever performances, I paid so much attention. And what I did was I empathed with them. That's the way I started calling it. When I was teaching, I started using this term. And so I said to this girl, I said, listen, you're a highly sensitive person. I said, do you know what an empath is? And she said she did. And I thought, oh, okay, I am underestimating this new generation. Clearly, I need to open up my own mind and start being a little more comfortable with my true perspective. And so I said, okay. So I said, I am too. And I actually admitted this to her. It was the first time I ever said that to a student. And I said, you know what? The way I learned how to sing really was through this gift of empathy. I said, I want you to listen to me sing this next part, and I need you to use your high sensitivity. Close your eyes and feel what I'm feeling. So I sang for her, and I did it several times. And she closed her eyes and she sensed me with her emotional energy body. She sensed me with that part of her that we are not encouraged to acknowledge is real. She sensed what I was doing by feeling the vibrations. And this was through Zoom, by the way. This wasn't even in person. It's totally possible through Zoom. So she was feeling my energy. She could feel it vibrating in her own throat. And so she was able to do the technique I had been trying desperately to explain to her. What I couldn't explain to her, I modeled for her, and she used her gift of sensitivity to feel in her own throat what I was doing, and she was able to recreate it on her own. That is the good news about being an empath on this journey. I know that there are so many things working against you, but take that bit of information and run with it. Because here's what I've learned in my own path. The voice carries a lot of power, a lot of healing power. And the more relaxed you get using your voice, especially in your own personal practice, the more you start to break up those lifelong patterns of tension that are blocking your ability to speak and sing freely. So the more relaxed you get in using your own voice, the more healing that you're going to find, healing that needs to take place because you're an empath. Because you're an empath, you have been taken advantage of by manipulative people. People who can tell that you're an empath, even if they don't have the terminology. They have an ability to read your energy too. We're all we're all sensitive, telepathic, psychic people. This is not really an unusual gift. It's just it's been erased from a lot of people's awareness because it works to the advantage of the manipulators. And right now, a lot of them probably still have some power over you, but that's why you're on this healing path, because you're trying to take your power back. And so you know who the people are in your life who are still they still have some power over you. They still even if they're not in your personal life, there are still systems in place. There are still outside influences throughout the media, throughout your school system, through your job system, through your neighborhood, your community, your family. There are still so many people and systems that are trying to that can tell that you are one of these empaths, and they're testing you all the time. And you have decided that you are going to take your power back. And so you may have these moments where you get pulled into their web, but you pull yourself out. You always pull yourself out and you keep going and you learn your lesson and you keep going. You keep fighting your battles along the path of the hero's journey. And you keep showing up to do your voice practice. And you don't shame yourself for how you do your voice practice or when or if you're making any progress, because that shame, that is the voice of the manipulators. That is not your voice. Your job is to learn how to talk to yourself in a way that your empath needs to be spoken to. Your empath is more like a sweet child. And would you really want to yell and scold a sweet child who just needs to be taught differently, who just needs to learn different ways of being? Okay. So that's I think I'm going to stop there. I'm going to hand it over to you. I hope that this helped you, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this matter. So please leave some comments. I'm checking both YouTube and Substack. I don't think you can leave comments on Spotify. So I'm not checking over there. So if you want to be part of the discussion, please join me on either of those two platforms and keep an eye out for my voice liberation course. I'm making it for people like you because I want to live in a world where people feel free to express themselves. I like a world that's filled with color. I like people who are different. I like people who are not like me. I get bored. The moment I realize I'm in a room full of people who agree with me, I think, "Mm, maybe I need to change my perspective." My point is, I like people who are unique. Other people like people who are unique. Even though the world looks like it's full of people who are afraid to be different, it's not really in our nature to be that way. And every time you declare your own individuality, you inspire other people to do the same. So keep going because the world needs your unique voice.